The date was October the 31st, 1989. Halloween night. A fog, thick as a grave shroud, hung over Hollow Creek, Vermont. Not the usual autumn mist, but something denser, with a clammy feel, like a damp hand on your skin. Deputy Harding found the car abandoned on Blackwood Road, that old, gnarled stretch of asphalt where the trees seemed to lean in, watching. Engine running, headlights cutting two weak beams into the swirling gray. Empty. The car belonged to Thomas and Eleanor Vance, a young couple, fresh-faced but with a haunted look in their eyes, that arrived in Hollow Creek 2 weeks prior, like birds seeking a final refuge. They said they were looking for quiet, for a new beginning. They rented a small cabin, tucked deep in the woods, the kind of place where secrets go to fester. But after a few fleeting sightings, no one had seen them for days. Deputy Harding, a man who always trusted his gut, felt a cold dread crawl up his spine. He radioed for backup, his voice tight. He checked the car, the air inside thick with the smell of leather and something acrid, like burnt hair. No signs of a struggle, no forced entry. Just a single glove, lying on the passenger seat, as if carelessly dropped. Black leather, too small for a man, and when he touched it, a chill like touching something that was meant to be dead, seeped into his fingers. He didn't know then, but the glove smelled of decay and ash, but he couldn't yet smell it. They searched the area, the woods a labyrinth of shadows, each tree a twisted, watchful thing. The cabin was empty, the beds unmade, their meager belongings scattered around like remnants of a forgotten dream. The local newspaper, the Hollow Creek Gazette, ran the headline, in bold, black letters, "Vanishing Vances." Underneath, a photo, a picture of a couple who seemed to have stepped from a time before, smiling like they had never felt the touch of dread. The investigation stalled, going nowhere fast. No leads, no witnesses, no ransom notes. Just silence, and a lingering cold that seemed to cling to your bones, long after you left the woods. The kind of cold that makes your teeth chatter even when you're sweating. Then, 3 weeks later, something shifted, like the world turning on a faulty hinge. The local librarian, Mrs. Gable, a woman who lived her life in the hushed quiet of books, went missing. She lived alone, a small, wizened figure who always wore the same shade of gray. Like the Vances, she always kept to herself, as if she held a secret close to her chest. Her house was locked from the inside, the windows latched. Her car sat in the garage, untouched. But she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of old paper and something else, something faintly metallic. The sheriff, a man named Bartlett, gruff and seen it all before, found a book on her table, a thing that seemed to pulse with a hidden darkness. Bound in dark, cracked leather, no title, just strange symbols etched into the cover, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift under the lamplight. He opened it, the pages feeling cold, like touching the skin of something dead. They were filled with sketches, not of trees, but of things that looked like trees, their branches twisted into grotesque shapes, like suffering limbs reaching for salvation, and strange figures with eyes that were not hollow but like black pits, absorbing the light, always watching. There were words written in a language that scraped at the edges of sanity, a language that spoke in whispers of pain and loss. He felt a shiver crawl up his spine, a warning of something dark. He did not recognize then he was looking into a mirror. Then one of the other deputies, a man named Miller, young and eager to prove himself, found something in the woods near the Vances cabin, a place where the fog always seemed to linger longer. A circle of stones, not just any stones, but each one etched with the same symbols from the book, surrounded by burnt ash, fine as dust, and smelling like sulfur and decay. In the center, he found a small silver locket. It was engraved with the initials TV. He picked it up, and the metal felt so cold it burned his skin, like touching something pulled from an icy grave. From then on, a subtle shift started to ripple through Hollow Creek, like the slow spread of a disease. People saw things out of the corner of their eyes, figures moving in the shadows at night. Not the usual wildlife, but something else, something tall and thin and unnervingly wrong. They heard whispers carried on the wind, whispers that called out their names, that promised things best left unspoken. Animals acted strangely, their eyes wild and terrified, their movements erratic and unpredictable. The town felt like it was slowly being consumed, not by the fog, but by something that was seeping out from the woods. Then, on the 7th of December, another absence, another soul swallowed by the void. A young boy, 9 years old, little Billy Thompson, playing in his backyard, a space that was once filled with light and life, just vanished. His mother said she heard his laughter, then silence, and the silence was heavier than any sound. They searched all night. The whole town joined in the search, calling his name until they were hoarse. But he was gone, as if he had never been. And the only evidence was a strange smell of sulfur and ash. Sheriff Bartlett, already fraying at the edges, found a clue in Billy's house. Another book, the same kind, bound in cracked leather, the same twisted trees, the same figures with black eyes, and the same language that seemed to scratch at your mind, trying to burrow its way into your thoughts. He looked at the symbols again, feeling a sickness in his gut, a sense of recognition, as if he had seen them before, but could not recall where. Miller started having nightmares, not the usual bad dreams, but vivid, tactile horrors. Each night a descent into a deeper circle of hell. Twisted trees that grew from his skin, hollow-eyed figures that whispered his name from the shadows, and that smell of burnt ash that filled his lungs until he choked, and the feeling that something was always behind him. One night, he woke up screaming, his body slick with cold sweat. He told his wife he could smell the burnt ash, that it was embedded in his clothes, that he could taste it in his mouth. And he could hear it now, the humming, not a mechanical drone, but a song, a lullaby from a forgotten time, a song of pain and loss that felt like it was resonating within his bones. Then, on the night of January the 1st, as the town prepared to welcome a new year with hope and fear, another disappearance, more terrible than any before. This time, it was Sheriff Bartlett himself, a man who thought he was stronger than the shadows. Gone from his office, like a ghost drifting away. His desk untouched, his coffee still warm, his radio still on, crackling with static. But he was gone, leaving behind only the lingering smell of sulfur and ash, and that book, lying on his desk like a malignant seed, the leather cold to the touch. The town was in a panic, the remaining people fleeing in droves. They said Hollow Creek was cursed, that the very earth was rotten and the air poisoned with fear, that the Blackwood Road was a gateway to another world. The roads leading to Hollow Creek became overgrown with weeds, and the town was left to decay. But sometimes, on a foggy night, travelers say they see figures moving in the trees, shadows that seem to watch with malevolent intent. They swear they can hear whispers carried on the wind, whispers that seem to know their names. And they can always smell it, the faint but pervasive odor of burnt ash. They say if you listen carefully, you can hear it too. The soft, haunting humming that pulls you deeper and deeper into the dark, that whispers of old gods and forgotten rituals, a song that promises nothing but pain and loss. Miller, the last one left, decided he wasn't going to leave. He was going to fight. He returned to the woods not as a lawman, but as a man who was ready to face his demons. He looked at the circle of stones, and this time he didn't just see it, he felt it, a pull like gravity, a dark force that emanated from the earth. He put his hand on the locket, and the cold seared through him, crawling up his arm, wrapping itself around his heart, his very soul. He could hear the whispers from all around, no longer whispers, but a chorus of voices, calling his name, drawing him in. He could see shadows, not just in the corner of his eyes, but everywhere, twisting and forming into shapes that had no name. Miller tried to turn away, to run, but something pulled him closer to the circle, a force he could not fight. He closed his eyes and felt as though his skin was being torn away. His soul ripped into a million pieces, and then only silence and the sweet smell of sulfur and burnt ash. Miller was never seen again. The town was abandoned, left to the fog and the shadows and the whispers. But sometimes on a foggy night, they say, the wind carries the humming from the woods, And if you stand still enough and listen, you can almost hear a voice, not a whisper, but a song that promises a welcome of pain and loss that will draw you into the dark.